Hello, welcome to another episode of Faith and Freedom. I'm Garrett, the Christian Libertarian, and I hate to dwell on the whole COVID thing, and I really hope and pray that we're winding down on it, but we may not be. So I think it's important to kind of look back at an important lesson that I think we've learned in the past couple years. And if you are a follower of Drash Ministries, which I hope you are, you can go back to I will try and find it and post the link on this episode when it's out. And I believe it may have been a conversation I had with Mel at the Sophie Scholl Society, but it was early on when this whole COVID thing came out, and we were talking about all the red tape and all the hurdles with the government agencies like the FDA and the USDA and things like that in terms of getting things like testing, vaccines, treatment, treatment that we're still don't have necessarily available for doctors now in large quantities, and doctors restricting. But I kind of want to look at testing, because that was a big thing that I brought up. I said, you know what, in my libertarian dream where we could just can the FDA right now, and this was back in March 2020, I said if we could just can the FDA right now, we would have at-home test kits for COVID similar to how we have at-home pregnancy test kits within months. And I stand by that statement. And I still think that we should get the FDA out of the way. But not only that, we need to get government entirely out of this whole COVID issue with tests, with vaccines. And our county's made some strides on that recently. And I don't know if it's because of necessarily coming to their senses rather than coming to their wits' end with all the testing and the contact tracing, but they've basically thrown up their hands and said, we're not doing it anymore. Don't report your tests. We're not going to contact trace. If you test positive, please notify the people that you've been in contact with. Sort of an honor system, which I think would have been sufficient from the beginning. If government has any role at all in terms of state, federal, or county health departments, it would be a repository for information, right? With a lot of links that sent you to actual medical professionals, actual epidemiologists, not Dr. Fauci, not the White House political medical team, real doctors, real experts. But to get back to testing, right? So where are we now? So what we did is we kept the FDA in place, and we really pulled the reins back on a lot of companies that would have been willing and able to invest in developing at-home COVID tests, and we bottlenecked that down to a handful of companies able to produce it. And then we thought we were through COVID in the first wave. So all those companies lost the incentive because the government was subsidizing some of their production initially. Then when people didn't necessarily want COVID tests, the government pulled back the subsidy money that was driving the production of the tests. So these facilities that made the tests laid off workers, shut down their lines, and now the demand for at-home tests is through the roof. And meanwhile, they ramp these testing facilities back up to produce all these tests. And who buys the first wave of tests that gets produced? The state and federal government, and squirrels them away in these stockpiles and in these corners of this giant bureaucracy, to where right now here in our community, I don't think you can find an at-home COVID test. And if you can find them, they're like $30 for a kid of two. Our family got some, and if you're fortunate enough, I guess, to have school-age children, some of the schools handed them out, but there's still a bunch lost in the ether of government bureaucracy. And meanwhile, someone, a middle-aged or elderly person that's still working because they need to work and comes down with some symptoms, can't find an at-home test at Walgreens or CVS because the government has got involved and influenced the market, where the best solution was from the beginning to cut the regulations, cut the red tape from the FDA, and let whoever wanted to produce at-home tests, and let whoever wanted to buy them with their own money drive the market. And at this point in time, we would have had tests widely available. They'd probably be half the price. So I don't think it's too late to learn this lesson. I don't know if we will. There was just a big hearing in the Senate at the Capitol today, and it was back and forth, the same old blah blah blah, with a bunch of politicians, with other politicians, with executive branch appointees, a lot of finger pointing, but the problem is all of them. The problem is every single one of them being involved in what should be a private free market of testing, of healthcare, and that goes across the board for COVID, for cancer, for whatever. The bottom line solution is separation of health and state. It's a free market healthcare system. It's a free market drug and treatment industry. And with the help of doctors and patients getting the medicines that work and what they need, the price will be reasonable and the availability will be as best that it can be. A lot better now than the bare shelves of COVID tests, because we have governments subsidizing the industry and governments buying up the supply. So that's my little message on testing, testing, testing. Hopefully we can take those lessons. If anything, just encourage those in your local government that have backed off and tried in their own little sphere of influence to pull the plug on COVID and leave it up to the medical professionals and the people that are out here, the general public. So thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time on Faith and Freedom.